Thank you. Special thanks to FINA for the invitation to come here and talk to you guys today. It's a big honour for me to be here, and hopefully you can glean something like I've already gleaned from the presentations this morning. So thank you. Probably, before I start, I think we've all got a tough job when it comes to coaching. I think whether involved in club programs, national programs, I operate out of a school. But I think the toughest job that I've ever had to go through is to stay married for 23 years. So to all of you that are in long-term relationships, work at it. It's the toughest thing that you can do. In my previous life, I was a swimmer. I was on the national team from about 1979 through to about 1987. I was at the Australian Institute of Sport from its inception back in the days of 1981 right through to my retirement in 87. And in that crazy era, I had many coaches that I was fortunate enough to learn a lot about, and some things what we do and what we don't do anymore. But I came from an era of 100 plus K a week. The Bill Sweetenhams, the Dennis Pursleys, the Otto Sonnleitners, Ken Woods, etc. So that I've had an opportunity to look at the way those coaches coached in the time that we did do those crazy things, and over the years change my philosophies on what's best to what I think to make sure we have longevity with our swimmers. I think it's important to make sure that our swimmers are still swimming into their late 20s, early 30s. I think so much has changed in the last 10 to 15 years in particular with swimming when it comes to athletes physically maturing so we get the best out of them. Gone are the days where they're done and dusted by the time they're 20. My coaching experience, I started coaching, I was fortunate enough to get an assistance role with one of my last coaches who taught me about speed training and the importance of recovery and resting. And there's a bit of a story that involved Bill Sweetenham in my last year at the AUS, and I was a hard worker as a swimmer, not a great talent, and I was training and doing everything that we were told as what we want our athletes to do. And this particular season, my last season, I said to Bill, look, I really need to try and do it a different way. I've done it your way and all my other coaches' ways and stuck. And I said, I think at 25, I know myself and I need to know when I need to have a rest and when I don't. So Bill said, yes, good, go for it. Anyway, the season unfolded, and certain mornings I might have to sleep in, which I thought would be best for me. Anyway, there was a knock on the door by one of the assistant coaches. Brownie, get out of bed, Bill wants you at training. I said, no, I've talked to him about this, it's fine. Anyway, this went on through most of the season, and I ended up going away that year and swam at 25 years of age, my fastest 400 IM, 200 fly and 1500 freestyle. And I remember coming back from the tour and Bill said, see Matt, I told you this system would work. So it's something that you've got to continually believe in yourself about what you want to do, what your ideas are and where you want to go with those ideas. I started coaching Emily when I moved to Brisbane in 2002. She was 9 years old. She was, as a talent at that stage, like everybody else, very technically poor with her skill. And I'm a big believer that you don't need to start with lots of volume, with lots of sessions and with lots of training. I think every individual has to have the chance to develop when they're young, right through to probably 16 years of age. Make sure that they are doing other sports. And Emily, as a youngster, was encouraged to do netball. Her mother was a fantastic netball player for Australia. She had sport in her background. Her father was a football player for Australia, and so all these sort of things were in her favour. And at 10 years old, who cares whether you're the fastest in the state or in the club or whatever? You've got to enjoy what you do. So from there, she won her first national medal as a 12-year-old. I pulled her out of our junior program because she was getting bored as an 11-year-old. She was probably going about 3 sessions a week at the time, and was a precocious individual that had a concentration span like a soap dish. It just wasn't very, very good at listening. So we started to put a little bit of, I wouldn't say pressure on her, but getting her to really concentrate, and that was a skill that she learned early. And all of a sudden she went from 115 for 100 backstroke at the age of 10 or 11 through to 104 for 100 backstroke at the age of 12. And when she swam that, she actually negative split it because her skills were so poor She was on the wall in 32.2 and came back in 31.9. And at 12 years old, that was pretty scary. And at that point of time, I remember saying, okay, this kid could be pretty good. As a 13-year-old, we didn't do much with her. She kept doing the same amount of sessions. She didn't improve that much as a 13-year-old. And then as a 14, after she turned 13, before she turned 14, I talked to her parents and said, look, she's now got to start doing a bit more work. At 13, she was the same as a 12-year-old, still pretty good, but if she wants to be competitive, she's got to start doing a few more sessions. So we upped it a little bit. And anyway, she made a breakthrough. As a 14-year-old, she made the national team. She dropped from 103 down to about 101, I think. And at Worlds, and then made another drop at the World Championships in Melbourne about 4 months later. And she finished, I think she qualified fastest for the 100 backstroke in the semis with a 005, and then spent, and I thought was great for her future career to learn what it was like to be under pressure, spent 24 hours sitting in that #1 spot after the semis for the final. In the final, she swam the same time and got 4th, which I thought was good because she really, I'm a big believer, I think Graham talked about it, what you put in, you get back, and at that point, she hadn't put in. So I don't like kids getting rewarded for things that they really don't deserve. As a 15-year-old, that period of time from 208 through to end of 209 became a bit silly. The suits came in. She broke a world record because she was one of the first people to wear the suit in early 08. She was 15. She went to the Olympics in 08 and had a disastrous individual swim. She went in as a 59.5 swimmer. She swam 100.20, I think, and missed the final by a couple of 100ths of a second. She was 9th. We turned around within a week. She led off the relay in 59.3, which would have got a silver or bronze in the individual. So she's one of those individuals that can learn quite quickly. And that's one of the things that I like about Emily, and not just Emily, but talented swimmers you find have great acquisition of skill. They can pick up skills easily. Emily's one of those people. She learns fast from mistakes. Next year we had Worlds, and I found with the suits, and especially with the whole 100% poly suit that came in 09, for the swimmers that were really good, it tended to maybe drag them back a little bit. So I was very happy to see the end of the suits at the end of the 09 season. And 210 was probably her breakout year. She ended up, had many, many meets. And at that stage, even though she was known as a backstroker, she was very proficient with other strokes. The philosophy from our program is Medley-based. Whether that's just me being a medley swimmer, I don't know, but I think it's a healthy way to train an athlete. So she went into 210. She won Pan Pacs in the 200 medley. I think she went under 210 for 200 medley at Pan Pacs. She was second in the 100 freestyle at Pan Pacs, 53 high. She won the 100 back at Pan Pacs. Then had to back up that 5 weeks later at Delhi, and did a good job there with 8 medals from 8 events. And then we were sitting on top of the world almost. And early 2011, and I think part of this too was what happened in 2010, where she had a very big program. She was multi-eventing at that point in time, and that was the plan for a good 2 years or a year and a half leading into London, was to get her to multi-event. She was a good flyer, 26.0 and 58 for fly, these are long course, 53 for freestyle, 58 high, 59 for back, 2.9 for medley. She'd gone 4.10 for 400 freestyle as a 14, 15-year-old with minimal work behind her. So she had a good gamut of all the distances. And after, I think, Pan Pacs, she had 15 or 16 swims in 4 days. Commonwealth Games, she had 22 swims in 6 days. We had short course trials. She had 23 swims in 5 days. And we were to go to short course, I think it was in Dubai, in 210, but we pulled the pin. I said, that's too much. And she just was emotionally exhausted. Anyway, we started the 211 season, and we had 2 or 3 competition blocks in a row about 5 weeks out before trials, which is what we always do. And by the time we finished the second competition, she was really off. She started her racing was poor. She was listless. Anyway, went to hospital about 2 days after we got back from New South Wales Opens, and they diagnosed her with swine flu. And that was the start of a lot of things. And that was 5 weeks out before trial. So she spent a week in hospital. got over it to a point. We got her to trials. She managed to qualify for the World Champs last year, barely. I think she went 00 for 100 back, 00. She ended up getting sick again after that. She had glandular fever. She then had, we were in the US for the Santa Clara competition, so June 11. And I think the second or third day in Santa Clara, she started vomiting and vomited for another 2 weeks, literally leading into Shanghai. She had peritonitis. So it was just one thing after another, and ended up getting her through to Shanghai. She ended up doing a fantastic job in Shanghai. She got 4th, which again I thought was brilliant considering what she wasn't able to do. All the while, I really wasn't understanding totally what she was going through, and this is probably the most that I've learned about any athlete at that point in time, and I've been coaching now for 26, 27 years, that you really have to have trust and faith in your athlete. You really have to believe in them 100%. And we've heard that word trust on 2 or 3 different lectures this morning. And I think it's so important that you have to have that undividing trust. It's got to go both ways as well. And so after Shanghai, she came home, straight into hospital, had the tonsils out. They did a biopsy of the tonsil bud and found that the H1N1 virus, the swine flu, was still in her tonsil. So summed up a lot of things, had a month out of the water, back in, and had a really good preparation in regards to that. There was a few emotional issues following her through that period of time from after the hospital break through to the Olympics. But I think in general, getting herself back from a physical ailment that she had to the fastest 100 backstroker in the world this year was a pretty good job. As I said earlier, we talked about Emily's workout progression. She's always been, and not just Emily, but a lot of my athletes. Again, I want athletes to be around later. So you look at the athlete development as a holistic model. In Australia, and I think around the world, swimming sport isn't the be-all end-all. So there are a lot of distractions when it comes to I know in Australia, our athletes. So sometimes it can be exceptionally hard. Why can't I go down the coast? I mean, Emily's 20 now. We live in Brisbane, where you've got the Gold Coast, a lovely place of the world, less than an hour drive. You've got the Sunshine Coast, less than 45 minutes drive either way. So there are a lot of distractions for that to occur. And to try and sell the idea that, well, yes, I know your friends are going out and doing these things, but in the bigger picture, you've got to be making the right decisions. So from an early age, we started off, as I said, a 10, 11-year-old. She was 3 sessions a week. There was no dry land. 4 sessions a week as a 11, 12-year-old, 3 sessions, sorry. 4 as a 12 to 13-year-old, where she went that 104 for 100 back. As a 13 to 14-year-old, she really only did 4 or 5, didn't really improve many sessions, and that was where I would have liked to have taken a step. But Mum and Dad were quite adamant that, no, we want to keep her doing what she's doing well. I think they realised after that point, 13 turning 14, that the time had to change, that work needed to come in. Now, when I say work, she still only went up to 6 or 7 sessions. Right through to Beijing, she still wasn't going over 8. She was doing up to 7. After Beijing, as a 16-year-old, we talked about doing 8 sessions a week. And then after Rome, as an 17, 18-year-old, we talked about going the 9. We do 9 sessions a week. And she's been fortunate enough that in those 10 years, she's still had progressions all the way through. She's had her fair share of setbacks, as all champion swimmers do, all champion athletes. People that perform well in life have their setbacks and they come back better for it, they come back stronger. Training Emily, and Emily is an anomaly when it comes to people that I've seen in the swimming world, or from an Australian perspective anyway. Emily doesn't live, breathe and eat swimming. Never has. I think maybe at this point of her life she's becoming a little more hungry for it, but swimming has just been something that she did, and she has fun doing it. Now, I don't like using the word fun when it comes to elite swimming, because fun conjures up practical jokes and playing around and not quite getting the things that we need to do. I think we try and have enjoyment. You've got to get enjoyment out of what you do. So we have that fact, and Emily still, though, likes to have fun. So I've got to disguise training in as many ways and as many avenues as possible. And for example, if we're going to go 4 sets of a particular set on a Saturday morning at the end of the week, I'll put up that we're going to go 5, knowing that I only want 4 sets. And even at this stage, she still believes that she's getting the better of me by we only do 4 sets in the end rather than the 5 that I said we were going to do. So they're the sort of games that I've got to play with her still, and not just her, a lot of the team that I've got together are in that 16 through to about 21 range, because they're kids. They may be 20 or 21, but they're still kids. They're still children in the way they think sometimes, and it's very hard to break that. They're not mature adults yet. We like to try and do different things. I experimented, I came from the 25-400 era on 4-minute, 440 and things like that, short rest and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe it works. Some athletes need to do it, don't get me wrong, especially I think some of our female distance swimmers. But a lot of athletes don't need to go into that area. So what we tried to do, and Emily's definitely like that, she hates doing distance type work. So we tried to disguise it or put it forward in a different manner, in a different fashion. And it was put together, we started off just bike riding. Not bike riding on mountains, but bike riding on a spin trainer. And then I had X amount of bikes and I had more kids, so I had to have another exercise. So we started boxing, spar boxing as well. And then my group became a bit bigger, so we ended up throwing skipping in. So we have a 3-phase program on a Tuesday and Thursday morning where they'll spend 45 to 50 minutes as part of training time, not extra, but during our training. And the specific part of that training is to try and get an A2 to AT zone. And there'll be very short intervals of rest, and they'll be trying to maintain a heart rate of 30 or 40 below. So what you would like to try and get for a 50-minute swim session, we're trying to do twice a week as a 50-minute dry land session. Since we did that, since that's been instigated over the last 4 or 5 years, we have results now that we medal at 400s, 800s, 1500s, 400 medleys, 200 butterflies. So all the perceived distancey type events, 200 breaststrokes. And I think we're one of the only programs in Australia that, with a team of 15 or 16 swimmers at our age nationals, win events from 50 through to 1500 in all strokes and all distances. So I think these sort of lateral ways to get what we've done in the past that might be laborious and quite boring or mentally unstimulating, to get them to really bite at it and buy into a different way to do it. I really believe in high levels of competition. Training, to me, I still have disagreements with fellow Australian coaches sometimes on, we've got to train, we've got to be at training. I said, well, we've got a competition on. Yeah, well, we've got to be at training Monday morning. We'll do a full weekend competition, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they'll multi-event, might be 12 events, which could be 24 races over the heats and finals for those 4 days. And that's high quality swimming for 4 days. So if the next 3 days of training, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll go back into volume, but it won't be very hard because they've spent 4 days of racing. And this is one of the things I think that probably pushed Emily over the limit back in 2010, 2011, where she did so much racing that you can't continue to have that intensity when it comes to the training week as well. So you've just got to work with the structure that you have. But I'm a big believer that racing is important. Because if you want to swim fast when you race, you've got to train fast. And that's something that I've really worked on quite a lot. Our dry land program is all done within the college facility. I work at a boys' high school, for better sake. It's a Catholic boys' school, and I run a business unit out of it for the school, which encompasses our school program, our high performance program. We're a centre of excellence for Swimming Australia also. And we basically cover all our expenses. We actually make a profit for the school, quite a big profit. So it's a fairly large job. But to do that, we also have great facilities. Now, Nudgee College is renowned, if there are rugby fans out there, one of the better rugby schools in Australia. They produce a lot of wallabies. So we have great weight training facilities. I'm not saying that we do a lot of heavy weights, but probably the most important fact to understand when it comes to the way we work in the gym is we maintain full range of motion and have full strength at that full range of motion. I think in swimming that's important. So getting the full range of motion, reach, whatever, connection onto the stroke, and having strength at that range. If you develop strength and lose range of motion, then I think you've lost the plot. Okay, the other thing that I've probably been on, that probably the mid-90s, I did a postgrad And one of the units that we talked about was recovery. And the recovery aspect of it, there was a lady there that was leading the way, working at the AUS at the time. And we couldn't work any harder, and evident in the late 70s and 80s with the volumes that we were doing. We were working hard. And we went into that phase where quality became important and how much quality was too much. And the thing we forgot about was the importance of rest or active recovery. And I think one of the things that we've done in the program, and for example, I taper for 5 weeks. We got back from the US, we spent a month in the US this year. We went 3 weeks in Arizona. I've been fortunate to have some great contacts overseas, and through Frank Bush was linked to Arizona University and trained there and had some competition going into Santa Clara and a few other places. And we pretty much got back from Santa Clara and started tapering. Now, it was I've argued this point with a few coaches. It was a slow taper, obviously over 5 weeks, it takes time. But I wanted to try and maintain, like tell the kids, now we're on the home stretch. I think you talked about your 6 weeks out, you had that key. I love that, I talk about delivering a card or dealing a new card each time. And the deal is, at certain parts of the time, you need that trigger, and I like that. So we came back from Arizona, from Santa Clara, and started our taper, and that was 5.5 weeks out from London. And I think Emily at Santa Clara swam an equal best 200 backstroke, 2:08. She was 1:04 when she swam it. Her 100, she won the 100 in 00.00, I think. She went out in 29 high. And so she wasn't fast, but she was strong, she was fit, she was ready. Most important, she was healthy. Probably one of the things too, which is unusual, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, Chinese guy earlier mentioned it, that recovery time off is important. How many days off do you have a week or a year? I know Emily in the last 5 years has had a minimum of 5 weeks off for the year. That's not having Sundays off, that's 5 weeks after preparations. She will, and I think when we get to a slide a bit later, you'll see how that integrates within the program. She needs to have time off. My athletes do need to have time off because I'm pretty relentless on them about what we need done. As Graham mentioned earlier, if something's not done well enough, we will repeat it. We'll get it done until I'm satisfied with what that result is. But I know whenever I do that, and I've got a junior coach at the moment who's working with me, an assistant, my senior assistant, and he says, how do you always know the outcome when you put a situation up to your swimmers? And I said, well, I need to know that outcome, because if the outcome's wrong to what I think it's going to be, then I'm going to look like a complete fool. So if you're going to make those calls, I say make sure you know the answer to the call, make sure you know what the outcome is. And we have this saying, the swimmers go after I get them to repeat something and they'll do it even better. They say, okay, Matt, 6,374,000 swimmers won. I was wrong once. It's a medley-based program. All the swimmers swim medley. We don't do a lot of over-distance freestyle training. We do a lot of backstroke at low speeds. We do a lot of medley switching. The reason being, and I can honestly say this, I've not had a shoulder injury in 25 years of coaching, 26 years of coaching. I have people that hurt their shoulders by playing netball or falling over in football or whatever, but I've never had an overuse injury from swimming. Shoulders, knees, anything. Now, I don't know whether that's because we train medley, all the athletes train medley. I don't know whether it's because our dry land strengthens them up in the sense that their capsules are quite controlled, they're not loose. I'm not sure, but it's a statistic that I know from Australian coaches is quite unusual. We are high intensity and we are moderate to low volumes. Emily, I had another athlete on the team with Emily this year at the Olympics, a lady called Brittany Elmsley, who was part of the gold medal 4x1 freestyle team for Australia. Emily was part of that as well. And they would be lucky to do 40 to 50k a week. As you'll see soon, my weekly structure doesn't change. Whatever I do on a Monday morning in week 1 of a 15 to 16 week prep, I will be doing on Monday morning in week 5 or week 11 or week 14. The emphasis on what I do, on how much emphasis is put on those particular sessions, that changes. But every day, the weekly structure is the same. And I think that's important.
I discussed earlier about multi-eventing. I think it's so important. I don't like athletes going into a season having one event or one stroke. I think it's important that they have a secondary event, because not every time are they going to get up and perform well. You hear athletes that can perform well, and we've had some coaches talk about their athletes who can get up and perform well during seasons. I've had Emily go to a swim meet and go 220 for a tour and back, 225 for a tour and medley. 3 or 4 weeks later, as we've gone through a bit of adaptation, I've seen her go 212 for the tour and medley. I've seen her go 106 one week, and I've seen her go 59 on double over 4 weeks later. So I don't really worry too much about how fast they can swim during the season. If they swim well, it's good. If they don't, it's not too much of an issue, as long as they're hitting their training times. I have a problem if an athlete gets up and, say, Emily's finishing quality sets of backstroke in 62 or 63, and then goes to a dodgy meet somewhere and goes 64, because that's slow on training speed. So that's telling me emotionally she's not getting herself up enough for that particular meet. And that's one of the things I find is probably her weakest part of her ability. At trials this year, she had some personal issues on the second day. We broke up with her boyfriend. And I think 20 years old, 19 years old, first time she'd really been in love. And we all remember back to that stage when we were young and how much it means, and it rocked her. And usually she would just, if there's something goes wrong in her life, yeah, whatever, and gets on with it. But swimming, she would get back in control. Well, trials, it didn't happen. So we learn, we all learn. So, 59 tour trials were quite disappointing, but she won it and she made the Olympic team, and I suppose at the time that's all we needed to do. But it was a bit disappointing, from where she could have been. I talked about it before about you had your key. I like to have a new card, something different that we can develop or bring into the program every preparation. I like to have something at the 5-week mark when we taper to incite them, to excite them, to make them feel, all right, the hard work's really over. Now it's the fun stuff, the enjoyable stuff as we start to back down. Doesn't mean they don't swim faster in training in the last 5 weeks, but it just opens up their mind to a bit more excitement about what's ahead. The drudgery is over. Our weekly cycle, as I said earlier, it pretty much stays the same. Monday morning, I like to come in and just roll over. They have the speed-oriented guys, and again, the ones that are physically mature enough, and I've got some 20-year-old boys that aren't in the gym on Monday morning doing heavies. The Monday morning heavies are more Olympic, heavy type weights, and not by lifting extremely heavy loads with small reps the other way, by lifting higher reps and keeping the speed in. If they can lift heavy loads doing it, that's great. After they finish on the Monday morning, they basically go into some aerobic swimming. Every session has some sort of speed element. Every session bar Tuesday afternoon, which is our only recovery-based session. And Tuesday afternoon is usually done as I think someone talked about peer coaching. The cameras come out, we've got underwater video, set up a big 42-inch screen in my office window. So they have total control. I don't use a stopwatch on a Tuesday afternoon. I sit back and I watch how they interact. As soon as we're on the sessions, girls might work with girls, and whatever they particularly need, you've got 6K or 5K. One of the biggest sessions for the sprinters is our recovery session. How you want to do that is up to you. You've got 3 hours. So that's our recovery. It's their biggest volume session. But it gives them a chance without me being in their face. Monday night, we do a lot of quality racing, race-based stuff. I suppose the first thing to understand, I don't believe in doing a lot of 50-metre, 200-metre pace. I think I could probably still hop in the water and go 50 metres at 200-metre pace. That doesn't really mean much. It's when you've got to, right or wrong, I don't know, and I'm probably renowned as a 100-metre, 200-metre coach, but I like swimming 200-metre pace, going hundreds. So to do that, and with a simple formula, there'll be some slides up there a bit later, and just briefly touching on it, is that we halve your best 200 time. That is your 200-metre speed. Now, you might think, well, that's pretty tough. It is, that's very tough to swim half your best 200 time in training at any point. But a series of training sets that last from week 1 through to week 15 in a 15-week prep. And you'll see the progression soon, how it actually brings confidence within the athlete. Tuesday morning, we do our bike, box and skip. Then we go into broken, in the only short walk, one or two short walk sessions we do a week. We do long course most of the time. We have a 9-lane long course, 50-metre pool, and a 5-lane short course, 25-metre pool. Underwater sprints, underwater kicking, no breathing. That's the sort of hypoxia type work that we like to do. Again, it's all done fast. A lot of broken 50s, 100s, 75s, things like that. That session alone is only probably about 2.5K. Tuesday afternoon, as we talked about earlier, is just really low intensity, and it's basically I'll give them some directives. I might take, it's the afternoon that I bring in QAS, which is the Queensland Academy of Sport biomechanist, and I'll do individual things with individual swimmers. The rest of the group try stop swimming. So that told me that sometimes that we're not giving our athletes a chance. I mean, Emily's had 10 weeks out of the water. She's her first break in her career. She's grown 1.5 inches taller. You know, and that's, I wouldn't have thought that, but she's actually my height now, as she's a little bit shorter. So I think it's something, you don't have to have a champion at 15 or 16. I mean, I remember growing up and hearing coaches talk about if you haven't done a big aerobic background, by the time you're 12, 13, 14, you're never going to make it. I disagree with that. Yeah, I disagree with that.
Mr. Brown, you said that you give from 5 to 7 weeks of rest for your swimmers. Is it passive rest or active rest? What do they do?
Passive.
So they don't come to the pool at all?
Okay, I'd like to give you an example, and to couple with that, when they do have a rest, they come from a 10-day break. For example, we have our state championships in December, 16th to 21st of December. We don't have our trials until late April, so we've got 20 weeks. It's a long time. So from the 22nd of December through to the 2nd of January, they're on holidays. They've got to look after themselves. But what happens on the 2nd of January, we jump back in the water, gym, everything as if they've not had a day off. So, and if there's any whinging, the intensity of everything is exactly like it was leading into state championships. There's no building period of 2 weeks. So they understand to have these breaks, they've got to jump straight back into it. And I find that it doesn't give the time, like 10 days isn't enough time to have the sedentary metabolism established. If you had another 10 days on top of that building into it, then you might find that you've lost that athletic metabolism. But we'll have 5-day, 10-day breaks 4, 5, 6 times through the year.
Do you use surfing as part of training?
Yeah.
How often?
Not as often for us because we don't live near the coast. We're about 80 miles away from the coast. But I encourage, when the swimmers are on break, I'll encourage them to be in the water, yes. I think it's good.
Excuse me, could you tell us, is it any association exists between lactate rate after the major event, for example, and how it depends? I mean, qualification of swimmer and lactate rate after the race.
I suppose the problem, I don't do a lot of lactate. I spend most of my time, the only time when I use lactate is in our taper period to make sure that the athletes are resting enough. Because when they're in that work zone, most of my athletes have lactates that are quite low. For us to get in the 5 or 6 millimole range is actually quite good. Come race time, if I've taken her correctly, and I've been fortunate in the last 10 years that she's hit it, and most of my athletes do, started to occur. We stop our gym work pretty much 14 days out. They'll do body weight chin-ups, and they'll do leg lifts, which are just hanging from a bar and complete like ab lifts and things, all the way through to the last 3 days. But in terms of real gym, we stop 2 weeks out, and I've been told it's too much, it's too long, you'll lose the effect. I need that time so the athletes can recover properly. You're better off being over-recovered than under-rested.
What's your lactate rate, Emily, after Olympic race?
After Olympic race, probably around 13, 14. Yeah. And she can go in within 600 metres and a couple of ice baths, she can have her lactates down to under 2. One of the things with the buffering set, when we do a set, again, pretty tough set, 8 400s on 6 minutes. And they'll do a 100 dive max, get their time, get a lactate, and then swim off 300 at buffer speed. And on 6 minute mark, so 400s on 6, they're up ready to dive again. And she will probably, she'll do 2 of each, 2 fly, 2 back, 2 breast and 3. 102s for fly, 103s, 104s for back, 116 for breast, 58, 59 for 3, which is a fairly tough set. And in that set, we watch what happens after the individual 100. It can get up around 4 or 5 to start with. Then the buffer brings it back to 4 or 5. It will raise up to 6. The buffer will drop back to 4 or 5. And as the set goes through, the lactate slowly curves up, but she's still able to bring it through the buffering back down again. And Brittany proved this year when she was swimming at the Olympics, whether it be the 100 free or the 200 free, she had the same result. She could actually get that lactate with under 2.5 off very minimal swimming and a couple of ice baths. I know athletes you could spend hours swimming them off and their lactates are still sitting at 4.5, 5, you know. So I think it's whether it's the multi-eventing practice that you go through as they're developing athletes that creates that ability to tolerate that lactate, whether it's the buffering emphasis that you put in your training program. As I said, we quality swim of some range every session, bar one, every day, every week. So, yeah. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious, when you look back, for instance, for the Olympics, when you look back on your paper plan from the start, in which percent you've done your work in practice? How much you are do some flexible, or are you do improvisation?
I'm not a big fan. I suppose. Obviously, you have to plan. If someone said, failure's a plan is planning to fail. So you've got to have a plan down there. There are times where we've gone through a training week, and that you saw the weekly outline, and I'll push. I used to write, we'll do 4 weeks of preconditioning, we'll do 4 weeks of this, and we'll do 4 weeks of that. I used to do that many years ago. And it's got to a point now where I know what I want. I want them to get to that ceiling level of threshold before I step into really specific race quality work. Sometimes I can get 6, 7 weeks of just pushing to get to that level. Sometimes I can only get 5 out of it. And the things that I look for, I suppose, that tell me, like my athletes and the way that the program works, I know when the group are going to collapse, when they're going to, and the next step is they collapse and they get sick, is when their kicking speed goes slow. And I'm talking about short distance kicking speed, and they can't kick fast. Might be a second or second half difference over 25. When their skill level is poor, so their ability to, Emily's dolphining ability, or her, we do a lot of work on pulling up on the wall holds and then relaxing holds and relaxing, so we're building that nice high strength. When she gets to that point, and they're poor. Or the biggest sign is when the group become rapid with each other, when they become, like, it's very important to control group dynamics, otherwise you're going to have problems all over the place. You manipulate them in a way that they feel as though they're in charge, but they're still doing what you want them to do. And when all of a sudden those things, the narky attitudes come involved and they become nasty to each other, that's a sign where, and there might be a Thursday night to say, see you guys Monday. So, yes, you've got to know when to make the call like that and have
So do you have any talent hunt program? And is Emily part of the talent hunt program?
So,
Talent hunt program.
talent ID.
Yeah, talent hunt.
Yeah, all the time. From an Australian perspective, I think we could be much better by putting a lot more emphasis into talent identification. And again, what is talent? I've had Bill Sweetman was one of my mentors and coached me for years back in the 70s and 80s. And we have, some of you are probably on his forum list when he sends out emails galore. And initially I used to think talent was the ability to swim fast, which a lot of people can do. I used to think it was a very limited commodity, but a lot of people can swim naturally fast. And then I wasn't able to do that, I had to work hard. So then I thought talent was working hard. And I think that is, and I lived with that understanding for probably 15 years, 20 years. And I think the last 5 years, 7 years, being involved in the national team and being in the Olympics and Worlds and things like that, there are many talented people physically able to swim fast. There are many, many people that work hard. But I think the real talent is probably being able to go to an Olympics or a World Championships and do your best time. It's some ridiculous percentage rate, 10%, 12% of people that go to the Olympics and swim PBs. So it's being able to swim faster out of your comfort zone, whatever that happens to be. Whether it be a state level swimmer swimming at nationals, whether it be a national swimmer swimming at international. And I think that is the talent. Now, can you teach that talent? Is that an innate thing? Is it a mental toughness? I think it's a combination of a lot of things. But yeah, that's talent.
Hi, Coach. Can I ask you a question other than the subject? This is regarding the Australian swimming. We are always looking to Australian swimming in the past. And from 2012 London Olympics to Rio, how are you looking at, it was like Australia was #1 and #2 in the past. And right now, after the London Olympics, the position of the Australian swimming team is not as good as it used to be. So how are you looking at from London to Rio?
Look, I think we went in thinking that 10 or 11 medals was probably where we were at. And we won 10 or 11 medals. I think we won 10 medals. Obviously, the colour of the final medals didn't happen the way we would like. There were some instances where it could have been different, but could have, would have, should have, if, you know. I think there's a lot of things we're doing well. I think the biggest change is the rest of the world's caught up. The rest of the world is spread out. There's a lot more medals being shared across many more nations. And I think it's not that we've dropped down. I think a lot of people have caught us. And that's where, from a nation, we now have to go back and reassess what we do. And we've been quite innovative over the years. Maybe if we go back and be a bit more innovative again. So.
Thank you very much, Matthew.